The board cracked clean through under Isabella Watts's hammer, splintering into useless fragments. She stumbled backward, catching herself before falling into the frozen Arizona dirt. Christmas morning, 1871, and she was alone on the outskirts of Prescott, trying to build shelter from salvaged wood that belonged in a fire pit, not a wall. Her breath ghosted white in the bitter air. December in Arizona territory wasn't supposed to be this cold, but the winter had turned vicious, temperatures dropping below freezing at night. The scattered boards around her told the story of her desperation. Warped planks pulled from an abandoned freight wagon, pieces too damaged for anyone else to want. Isabella positioned another board, her bandaged hands shaking. The makeshift shelter leaned at an angle that defied physics, held together by hope and bent nails. 3 walls stood, barely. The fourth had collapsed twice already. She raised the hammer again, determined, exhausted, running out of daylight and options. From the ridge a quarter-mile north, someone was watching. She felt it suddenly, that prickle of awareness that came from frontier survival instincts. Isabella turned, squinting against the low winter sun. A rider sat motionless on horseback, silhouetted against the pale sky. Her heart hammered. Out here, a lone woman was vulnerable. A man watching from a distance could mean help, or could mean danger, and she had no way to know which until he made his move. If you're wondering what happens next, drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss these incredible true stories from the American frontier. The rider didn't approach. He just sat there, watching her struggle. Isabella turned back to her work, forcing her attention to the broken boards, but every nerve screamed awareness of his presence. She hammered another nail, too hard, and the wood split again. Zach Kent had ridden this same route every morning for 4 years since his wife died. The land knew his patterns, the cattle knew his silence. But today, Christmas Day, something was different. A woman worked near Eagle Creek, building something that couldn't possibly stand against the coming storm. He'd first spotted her 2 days ago, struggling with those pathetic boards. Each morning since, he'd paused on this ridge, watching from a distance, wrestling with conscience and convention. A man didn't approach a lone woman without invitation. Not in 1871 Arizona. The rules were ironclad, designed to protect reputations that could be destroyed faster than drought could kill cattle. But those rules didn't account for the reality unfolding before him. The woman's shelter was a disaster waiting to happen. 3 crooked walls that shuddered with each gust of wind, gaps wide enough to see through, no proper roof. She'd positioned it smart, near water but above the flood line, with stones arranged for a fire pit. She had survival instincts, just not the materials to match them. Zach cataloged details with a rancher's practiced eye. Her dress was threadbare, wrong for winter. Her boots worn through at the heels. The canvas tarp she'd stretched over part of the structure wouldn't hold against real weather. And real weather was coming. The northwestern sky held clouds like iron, heavy with the promise of snow. He watched her hammer, saw the board split, watched her shoulders slump for just a moment before she reached for another piece. That determination would get her killed when the temperature dropped tonight. His gelding shifted beneath him, as if asking a question Zach didn't want to answer. 4 years of keeping to himself, 4 years of going through motions. The ranch functioned but didn't thrive. The hands did their work. Life continued in the shape it had always held, but the center was hollow. The woman positioned another board. It was Christmas Day, and she was building hope from garbage while he sat on a horse, watching from safety. Isabella had believed the letters. 6 months of correspondence with Thomas Mitchell, a merchant in Prescott who'd promised marriage, a home, security. She'd sold everything she owned in Missouri, traveled west with hope packed as carefully as her few belongings. He'd married someone else 3 weeks before she arrived. The memory burned like acid as she worked. Mitchell had stood in his store, his new wife beside him, and acted like he'd never written those letters, never made those promises. "Sorry for the misunderstanding," he'd said, as if her entire life wasn't collapsing around her. Her money had run out in the third town. She'd walked the final 30 miles to Prescott, arriving with blistered feet and an empty stomach. The boarding house wanted payment up front. The hotel laughed at her request for work. Nobody wanted to hire a woman alone with no references, no connections, no proof she was respectable. So she'd walked out of town, following the creek until she found this spot. Public land, unclaimed. If she could build shelter, she could survive. If she could survive, she could find work eventually. If she could find work, she could build a real life. The if was piling up like these broken boards, each one more precarious than the last. Isabella hammered another nail, this one holding. Small victory. The sun was dropping toward the western mountains, shadows lengthening across the frozen prairie. She needed to finish this wall before dark, needed to gather more grass for bedding, needed to get the fire going before the temperature plummeted. A sound made her turn. The rider from the ridge was moving, not toward her but parallel, following the tree line, keeping his distance but getting closer. Isabella's pulse quickened. She set down the hammer, hand moving to the knife at her belt, a small blade but sharp. The rider stopped again, still 50 yards distant. He made no threatening moves, just sat there as the light faded, like a question waiting to be asked. What did he want? Zach's barn smelled of hay and leather and accumulated years. He stood in the half-light, staring at the stack of pine boards he'd purchased 5 years ago when such things had mattered. Rebecca had wanted to expand the garden, build raised beds for vegetables. She'd had plans, dreams, a future they were building together. Then the fever came, and plans changed into memories. He ran his hand along the smooth wood. Straight, solid, good lumber. Wasted, sitting here while a woman tried to build shelter with trash. "That's good wood you're looking at, boss." Dutch stood in the doorway, 60 years old and steady as fence posts. His foreman, his friend, the man who'd kept the Kent ranch running when grief made Zach useless. "Good wood deserves good purpose," Zach said quietly. "About damn time." Dutch smiled, weathered face creasing. "She's still out there?" "Building with broken boards on Christmas Day." Zach's jaw tightened. "Storm's coming tomorrow, maybe tonight. Those walls won't hold." "Then you'd better hurry." Zach loaded the pack horse methodically. Boards, nails, a proper saw, his good hammer. He added a canteen of water, strips of clean cloth, a tin of salve Rebecca had made for rope burns. Each item was a commitment, each one a choice to care about something beyond routine. The other hands watched from the bunkhouse. Young Miguel nodded approval. Old Garcia smiled into his coffee. They understood what was happening, even if Zach couldn't quite name it himself. "You need company?" Dutch asked. "No, but I appreciate it." "She got a name?" "Don't know yet." Zach swung into the saddle, pack horse lead rope secure in his hand. "But I know she needs help." Dutch's expression turned serious. "Boss, Rebecca would have done the same. You know that, right?" Zach's throat tightened. He nodded once, unable to speak. "Then do it in a way that'd make her proud." Zach rode out under emerging stars, the Milky Way beginning to spill across the darkening sky. The lumber rode solid on the pack horse, purpose given shape and weight. Behind him, the ranch glowed with lamplight, smoke rising from chimneys. Ahead, a woman was running out of time. The temperature was dropping fast. His breath showed white. By morning, there'd be frost, maybe snow. Those broken boards wouldn't protect her from what was coming. Enjoying this story? Hit that like button and share this video with someone who loves tales of courage and kindness from the Old West. and comment below. Where are you watching from today? Isabella heard the hoofbeats and grabbed her knife. The rider approached slowly in the gathering darkness, Packhorse trailing behind. She stood, back against her pathetic shelter, watching him stop 20 yards away. "Ma'am." His voice carried calm across the cold air. "Didn't mean to startle you on Christmas night." Isabella said nothing, assessing. He was big, weathered, with working clothes and careful movements. His hands rested easy on the saddle horn, not reaching for weapons. The packhorse carried lumber. She could see the boards clearly now in the twilight. "Name's Zach Kent. Ranch is 3 miles northwest." He dismounted slowly, keeping distance. "I've been watching you try to build with those broken boards. Can't build much with broken boards." "Why are you here?" Isabella kept her voice steady despite her hammering heart. "Because that storm's coming tonight or tomorrow." Zach gestured at the northwestern sky. "And you won't survive it with what you've got." He began unpacking lumber, laying boards near her collapsed wall. "Good boards, straight and solid, if you'll let me help." Isabella's throat tightened. Pride warred with desperation. Pride said refuse, maintain independence, prove she needed no one. Desperation whispered that broken boards had already failed 3 times, that her hands were raw and bleeding, that the temperature was dropping below freezing. "I don't have money to pay you," she said finally. "Didn't ask for money." Zach pulled down what remained of her structure without asking permission. "You've got 2 choices, miss. Let me help fix this proper, or freeze to death tonight. Your pride's your business, but I'd hate to find you dead come morning because you were too stubborn to accept good lumber." The bluntness shocked her. No flowery frontier chivalry, just stark reality. "I'm Isabella Watts," she said quietly. "And thank you." Zach nodded once and started working. His movements were efficient, purposeful, the actions of someone who'd built 1,000 things and knew exactly how they should be done. He sorted her broken boards, separating usable from worthless. "Hand me that brace," he said, and Isabella moved to help. They worked in darkness, building by feel and by the light of her small fire. Zach showed her proper joinery, how to check if a post was plumb, how to brace corners against wind. She absorbed every word, her hands moving with growing confidence. By midnight, walls stood square and true. The difference was remarkable. Solid where before had been precarious, straight where before had been crooked. "We'll finish the roof at dawn," Zach said, gathering his tools. "Get some rest. I'll be back with first light." He rode away into the Christmas darkness, and Isabella stood in her partially completed shelter, touching the good lumber with something like wonder. If this story is touching your heart, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with friends. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We love hearing from viewers around the world. Zach returned at dawn with coffee and bread. Isabella was already awake, huddled near her fire, but the shelter had held through the night. She looked up as he approached, exhaustion and gratitude both written on her face. "Merry day after Christmas," he said, handing her the coffee. "Let's get that roof tight before the storm hits." They worked through the morning, the rhythm between them strengthening with each board. Zach explained as he built, teaching her the why behind each decision. Isabella asked smart questions, anticipating what he needed, learning fast. "You've got good instincts," Zach said as they braced the roof supports. "Just needed proper materials." "Broken boards only get you so far," Isabella replied, hammering a nail true. By afternoon, the shelter was complete. 4 solid walls, a proper roof, a door that closed firmly. Isabella stood inside, overwhelmed by the simple fact of protection. Real protection. Not hope and desperation, but solid construction that would hold against wind and cold. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Zach gathered his tools, but his expression was troubled. Miss Watts, I need to speak plain. This shelter solves today. Doesn't solve tomorrow or next month. Isabella's stomach tightened. She knew it was true. My ranch needs help, Zach continued carefully. Cooking, mending, household management, garden work come spring. Pays fair. Bunkhouse has a spare room with a proper stove. He met her eyes directly. No obligation beyond honest work, if you want it. The offer hung between them like something fragile. Isabella's mind raced through implications. Working for a widower, living on his ranch, the gossip that would follow. But the alternative was starving in this shelter, alone, as winter deepened. I accept, she said. When do I start? I'll come by tomorrow morning, bring you to the ranch. Thunder rumbled in the northwest. The storm clouds were building, darker and heavier than yesterday. Zach glanced at the sky, then at the shelter he'd built. Should hold fine, he said, almost to himself. Good lumber, good foundation. After he left, Isabella sat in her completed shelter, touching the walls that would keep her alive. A stranger had appeared on Christmas with lumber and skill and unexpected kindness. Now he'd offered work, safety, a future beyond mere survival. But as the wind picked up and the temperature dropped, she wondered what price that future might carry. Ranch work was honest, but living at a widower's ranch would start tongues wagging. The frontier was harsh on women whose respectability was questioned. Still, frozen to death was worse than gossiped about. Zach arrived at dawn as promised. Isabella had packed her few belongings, 2 dresses, a worn shawl, a tin cup, the blanket. Everything she owned fit in a canvas sack. They rode in comfortable silence, Isabella on the pack horse, watching Arizona territory wake up under winter sky. The Kent ranch appeared gradually. Barn first, solid and well-maintained. Then bunkhouse, then the main house. It was larger than she'd expected, built from good lumber and care, but something about it felt hollow, like a place that functioned without truly living. Bunkhouse spare room's yours, Zach said, helping her down. Not fancy, but it's got a stove and a real bed. The room was small, clean, perfect. A window faced east. A stove sat ready with wood stacked beside it. After weeks of cold ground and broken boards, it looked like luxury. Thank you, Isabella said, setting down her sack. I'll earn this. I know you will. The hands were polite but distant when she met them. Dutch, the foreman, 60 and weathered. Garcia, quiet and kind. Young Miguel, barely 20, shy. They nodded greeting, but their eyes held questions. Who was this woman? Why was the boss bringing her here? Would she last? Isabella started in the kitchen that first afternoon. She found chaos, supplies jumbled without system, shelves disorganized. No inventory tracking. By evening, she'd transformed it. Everything sorted, labeled, logical. When Zach came in for supper, he stopped in the doorway, staring at the changed space. I hope this is all right, Isabella said quickly. I just thought... It's good, Zach interrupted. Real good. Rebecca tried to organize that kitchen for years. Never had time. Rebecca, his wife. The name carried weight, loss, unfinished dreams. They ate supper together, Isabella and Zach and the hands. Garcia told stories about early ranch days. Miguel asked if Isabella could help him write better, his face reddening with embarrassment at the request. I'd be honored, Isabella said, meaning it. After the hands left, she and Zach sat at the kitchen table with coffee between them. Outside, wind howled, but inside was warm and solid. You don't have to work this hard, Zach said finally. You're earning your keep with the cooking. I'm not afraid of work, Mr. Kent. Just Zach. He studied her across the table. The way you tried to build with those broken boards, that took real courage. Courage or desperation? Isabella asked quietly. Both, maybe. Zach's expression softened. But you didn't quit. That matters. What would matter more, Isabella wondered, was whether she could build a life here, whether the good lumber of honest work could support the weight of frontier judgment that was surely coming. Scene 8. Sunday Morning Reckoning. The trip to Prescott came on Sunday, a week after Isabella arrived at the ranch. They needed supplies, and Zach had banking business. Isabella rode beside him in the wagon, wrapped against January cold that bit through every layer. Prescott's main street was busy with after-church traffic. People noticed them immediately, a rancher and a young woman arriving together. Isabella felt the stares like physical touches, eyes tracking their movement, conversations pausing mid-sentence. Zach helped her down from the wagon, proper and polite. "Mercantile's there," he said, pointing. "Get what we need. I'll be at the bank." Inside the store, Isabella gathered supplies methodically, aware of Mrs. Patterson watching her with sharp eyes from behind the counter. The storekeeper's wife had a reputation for knowing everyone's business and sharing it liberally. "You're the girl staying at Kent Ranch," Mrs. Patterson said. Not a question. "Yes, ma'am. I work there." "Work." The word dripped skepticism. "And where exactly do you sleep? The bunkhouse spare room? How convenient." Mrs. Patterson's mouth pinched. "That poor dead wife barely cold in the ground, and here you are playing house." Isabella's hands tightened on the flour sack. Heat flooded her face, but dignity demanded silence. She completed her purchases and left quickly, ears burning. Outside, 2 women stood near the church steps, their voices carrying clearly in the cold air. "Living at his ranch. Shameful." "You know what she is. Why else would she be out here alone?" "That poor Rebecca. He's disgracing her memory." Isabella froze, groceries in her arms, unable to move. The words hit like physical blows, each one landing with the weight of social judgment that could destroy a woman's life on the frontier. The women noticed her. Their conversation stopped abruptly, but the condemnation in their faces remained clear. They turned away, skirts swishing with righteous indignation, leaving Isabella standing alone on the wooden sidewalk. She forced herself to walk to the wagon, load the supplies with shaking hands. Zach was still in the bank. She climbed onto the wagon seat and waited, staring straight ahead, trying not to cry. When Zach emerged 10 minutes later, his face was troubled. He climbed up without speaking, guided the wagon out of town. 2 miles passed in heavy silence before Isabella found her voice. "I'm leaving." Zach's hands tightened on the reins, but he didn't stop the wagon. "What happened?" "The talk, the looks." Her voice cracked. They think we're—" She couldn't finish. "And it's hurting you. The banker said something." "Didn't he?" Zach's silence was answer enough. "I won't cost you your ranch," Isabella said firmly. Zach pulled the wagon to a halt in the middle of the frozen road. He turned to face Isabella, his weathered face set with determination. "You think I care what Mrs. Patterson thinks?" His voice was hard, angry in a way she hadn't heard before. "Or those church ladies who've never known a day of real hardship?" "I care," Isabella said quietly. "I care that helping me is causing you trouble." "Then you don't understand what kind of trouble matters." Zach's expression softened slightly. "The banker made noise about respectability and loans, said people were talking, that it looked bad." He met her eyes. "You know what I told him?" Isabella shook her head, throat tight. "I told him my employment decisions were my own business." "That you'd earned your place through capability and character. That if folks wanted to gossip, that said more about them than about us." "Zach, the loan is secure," he interrupted. "The ranch is profitable. The bankers bluffing, trading on fear and social pressure. But I'm not afraid, and I'm not backing down. He looked at her directly, his gray eyes steady. 3 weeks ago, I watched you try to build shelter with broken boards. You didn't quit, didn't cry, didn't give up. You just kept trying with what you had. That's more courage than most people show in a lifetime. Isabella felt tears threaten. What if they make things impossible? Then we'll figure it out, together. That word hung between them, together. Not employer and employee, something more, something building toward partnership. I'm going back to town tomorrow, Zach continued. Going to make my stand public. Going to tell the banker and the reverend and anyone else who'll listen exactly what I think about their gossip and judgment. He paused. But I need to know you'll stay, that you won't run because people forgot what frontier life is really about, helping each other survive. Isabella looked at this man who'd appeared on Christmas with lumber, who'd offered work and protection, who was now willing to face down social condemnation for her sake. Courage came in different forms. His looked like standing firm when everyone else said to bend. I'll stay, she whispered. If you're sure. I'm sure. Zach's jaw set. You make this ranch feel like home again. First time in 4 years I've cared about more than just going through motions. I'm not losing that because some people forgot what decency looks like. They rode back to the ranch in thoughtful silence. Behind them, Prescott held its judgments. Ahead, the Kent ranch waited, solid and real. Isabella touched the wagon side, feeling the good lumber beneath her hand. Foundation, strength, the kind that held when storms came. This story of courage is reaching its powerful conclusion. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the ending. Hit that like button and share this with someone who needs to hear about standing up for what's right. Comment below, where are you watching from? Zach kept his promise. He rode to Prescott the next morning, spoke to the banker, the reverend, the merchants. He didn't ask permission or apologize. He simply stated facts. Isabella Watts worked for his ranch, earned fair wages, lived respectably in the bunkhouse, and anyone who questioned it could examine their own conscience. The reverend listened and nodded. The banker backed down when Zach threatened to move his business to the new bank opening in Phoenix. The merchants remembered that the Kent ranch bought supplies every week, and commerce mattered more than gossip. Some people never came around. Mrs. Patterson continued her tight-lipped disapproval. A few church ladies maintained their judgment, but enough people remembered frontier values, that helping someone survive mattered more than social convention, that the worst of the talk faded. By February, Isabella had transformed the ranch. The kitchen ran efficiently, supplies tracked and organized. She'd started planning the spring garden, researching crops that would thrive in Arizona territory. She taught Miguel to read better, helped Garcia write letters to family in Mexico, learned ranch management from Dutch. The ranch changed too. Or maybe it just remembered what it had been before grief hollowed it out. Laughter returned to the bunkhouse. The hands worked with renewed purpose. The main house felt lived in, cared for, home-like. One evening in late March, Zach found Isabella at her old shelter site. The structure still stood, weathered but solid, wildflowers blooming around it in early spring color. Thinking about that Christmas, Zach said, joining her. Every day. Isabella touched the wall built from good lumber. I tried so hard to make those broken boards work. It wasn't enough. You did what you could with what you had, Zach said quietly. That takes courage. You showed me the difference good lumber makes. Not just in building, but in everything. She looked at him directly. You gave me solid foundation when I only had broken pieces. You gave me something too, Zach replied. Reminded me that life keeps going, that there's purpose beyond just surviving. He paused, choosing words carefully. I was thinking about making some changes, expanding the operation, maybe bringing in more cattle, building a proper greenhouse for the garden. That sounds good, Isabella said. I was also thinking, Zach continued, his weathered face showing unusual uncertainty, about making our arrangement more permanent. Not just employment, partnership, equal stake in the ranch, decisions made together. He met her eyes. If you'd be interested. Isabella's heart lifted. Not marriage, not yet. Perhaps not ever in the traditional sense. But something deeper. True partnership built on mutual respect, shared labor, trust earned through crisis and choice. I'd like that, she said softly. Very much. They walked back to the ranch together as sunset painted the Arizona sky in gold and orange. Dutch stood by the barn and smiled, seeing them return side by side. Garcia waved from the garden. Miguel called out about supper being ready. Family sounds. Home sounds. Sarah touched Zach's arm gently. Thank you for the lumber, for the work, for believing I could be more than just someone who needed rescue. Thank you for showing me what real courage looks like, Zach replied, for reminding me that good lumber is wasted if you're too afraid to build something with it. They reached the main house as full dark settled. Through the windows, lamplight glowed warm and steady. The kitchen table was set for supper, plates for all the hands, everyone eating together like family should. The ranch hummed with quiet contentment around them. Cattle grazed on spring grass. Fences stood strong. The land prospered under care and attention. Some things you built with lumber. Some things you built with trust. Both required good foundation, careful work, and the courage to keep building even when storms came. Somewhere on the Arizona prairie, a shelter built from broken boards and good lumber stood as testament. Proof that what seemed impossible could become real when the right person appeared with the right tools at the right time. Isabella had arrived with nothing but broken boards and determination. She'd been given lumber, purpose, belonging. And together, she and Zach had built something that would last. Not just a shelter, but a home. Not just survival, but life worth living. Thank you for watching this incredible true story from 1871 Arizona. If it touched your heart, please like this video, share it with friends and family, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring